am here to do my May reading wrap-up. I have finally gotten out of my reading slump, and I think I read 10 books last month, so let's just jump right into the books that I read in May. The first book I read in May was My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. I read Rebecca a few years ago, and I really loved it. I think I gave it 4 or 5 stars. So I was really excited to pick this one up because I had heard great things about it. It was a little disappointing, and I didn't really end up liking any of the characters in it, but it was still a pretty interesting story, and I gave this 3 stars. Next, I read What to Do When I'm Gone by Susie Hopkins. This is a graphic novel about a girl who has asked her mother to write her a book on just kind of like tips on what to do when her mother dies. They pretty much joked through the entire thing. It wasn't a real serious book, but I thought it was really cute, and I liked that they put some recipes in that her mom used to make, and I gave this one 3 stars. Next, I read the short story Lori by Stephen King. I had seen that Stephen King had released a short story online for free, so I decided to read it one evening. It was really quick to read. I can't really say a lot about the book because it is a short story and I don't want to give anything away, but this is about a man and his dog who live in Florida. I thought this was really cute. I've only read a few Stephen King, but this one was one of my favorites. For it to have been such a short story, I thought the characters were developed nicely, and really I would have liked to have read more of this. I will leave a link to the website down below so you guys can read it as well. I gave this 4 stars. Next, I read Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. I had heard a lot about this on BookTube, and I decided to pick it up, and this was right up my alley. I had first started the first few chapters, and I really wasn't liking the main character, but once I picked it up on audio, I fell in love with it. I thought the narrator did a fantastic job, and I really loved all of the characters in this book. This really reminded me of a Frederick Bachman or a Rachel Joyce book, and those are 2 of my favorite authors. The description of this book says it's about a woman who doesn't really get along with one of her co-workers, but they find an old man who has collapsed on the road and they decide to go help him. That's only a tiny part in the book. There's so much that happens in this, and there are so many great characters in it, so I definitely recommend picking this up, and I gave it 5 stars. Next, I read I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. This has been making its rounds on BookTube recently, especially since they have just recently found the killer. I actually checked this out before they caught the guy, but didn't get around to reading it until after I had found out who it was. This is a true story about the Golden State Killer. This book was absolutely fascinating, and I love reading all of the articles on it in the news now. I'm so glad that they finally caught the guy, but I kind of wish that I had read it before I found out who it was. But I gave this 3 stars. Next, I read Mrs. Hemingway by Naomi Wood. I really loved The Paris Wife, so I thought I would really love this book. This is about the 4 wives of Ernest Hemingway, and it's historical fiction, but I kind of felt like it was more fiction than historical, and I really didn't believe that the wives would have thought like this, but this author may have done her research and this was what they were like, but it just seemed kind of cheesy to me and a little 50 Shades of Grey mixed with Ernest Hemingway, and I'm just really not interested in those kind of things, so I gave this one 2 stars. Next, I read The Vanishing Season. I've been in a thriller mood since reading Michelle McNamara's book, so I picked this one up and it was perfect for what I was looking for at the time. This is about a woman who is kidnapped as a child and she is found by a police officer. Flash forward about like 20 years later and she's an adult now, but she's starting to get birthday cards from who she thinks is the kidnapper, and girls are now starting to go missing in town, so she decides to call the cop that helped her when she was a child so they can try and figure out who this person is. I really enjoyed this book and I gave this 3.5 stars. Next, I read Uncommon Type by Tom Hanks. This is fiction short stories, and I listened to this on audiobook. It's read by Tom Hanks, and I definitely recommend listening to it. My favorite thing in this book was that every short story linked it back to typewriting, and I know that Tom Hanks really likes typewriters and everything, so it was really fun to kind of find all of those in all the short stories. I gave this one 3 stars. Next, I read At the Bottom of Everything by Ben Dolnick. This one has been on my shelf for years and I haven't gotten around to it, so I finally just picked it up on a whim. This is about 2 boys who are best friends until something happens to them in their teens, and they end up not talking to each other for years. They are now grown, and one of the boys' mothers calls one of the boys and tells him that he needs to come and see his best friend again because there's something weird going on. I had a real problem with a lot of things in this book, one of them being that they told us what the secret was from their childhood, like in the first 100 pages. So after finding out what it was, I really didn't have any interest in the rest of the book, and about the last third of the book was extremely boring and I found myself skimming through it. I really loved the cover of this book because it does glow in the dark, and I really liked the concept of the book, but it just really wasn't great for me, and I gave this one 2 stars. And the last book I read in May was And Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. I've read a few of her books and I really love all of them. This was just some poetry, and I'm not really into poetry, so I was a little confused at the beginning, but once I got into it, I was really loving it. I listened to this on audio as well, and it's also read by her. I could probably listen to Maya Angelou read every book I've ever read. She just has the most soothing voice to listen to. This is extremely short, so it only took about 30 minutes to read, and I give this 4.5 stars. Okay, so those are the books that I read in May. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. Also, let me know what your favorite book was that you read in May, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye!